Sophie, if you're in the room, I also apologize for the image in the low resolution. And yeah, so as you can see, I grew up watching The Simpsons. I actually was a huge Simpsons fan. And if you have been too, you might remember the classic episode where Homer gets to design his own car. And for those of you who know the episode, you might also remember that the car had a lot of exciting features. It had this bubble dome where he could put in his kids so that they wouldn't annoy him. You could store your bowling ball, and the horn even played La Cucaracha. But besides having all of these super fancy features, the reaction of the crowd was, let's say, mixed. Now the software world recognized such problems a long time ago. Especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was this almost revolutionary spirit present in the world of software. Those times gave birth to the Manifesto for Agile Software Development, extreme programming, and many more. But let's take a look how many of these practices are often adopted in reality. So I'm pretty sure most of us here are already familiar or have been working with some sort of Agile framework. Let's take Scrum, for example. So the main idea behind Scrum is to deliver value in an incremental and iterative way, delivering increments of value from one sprint to the other. And now there's obviously nothing wrong with this idea, but what we often encounter is that behind our apparently agile processes lies a fixed company roadmap, and one that, especially in a big enterprise context, already dictates a certain amount of features as the fixed goal for a given period. Let's say those are the features that we want to ship in the next 6 months. Let's now also take a look at how we describe some of the benefits and metrics that we are gaining from many agile methodologies. We have such things as, time to market, delivery speed, and especially in Scrum, we are obsessed with this magical number of tracking our team's velocity. And there's obviously nothing wrong with wanting to have a short time to market. It's also a goal that we are striving for. But what we often see that behind those metrics, what we mean is that we prioritize output over outcome. We often think in the amount of features shipped. Features shipped last sprint, last month, last year, rather than considering the outcome and impact that they might have on our users. So the question is, how does that play out for us until now? Well, I would like to bring up a white paper from Pendo, a product analytics company here at this point, and they released this already in 2019, where they found out that, I think they monitored around 600 different companies, that 80% of the features which they monitored were only rarely or never used, and that it cost those companies around $30 billion to develop them. So not only is this a giant waste of money, but it also means that our time as developers could have been facilitated much better. This is why we want to advocate towards putting the interest of our customers first, rather than already be thinking about distinct features. So, I am Thomas Pokorny, a software engineer and agile coach at Square, and together with Matthias Gruber, the head of engineering at Platomics, and our team, we are developing the IVD Assistant, where we are hoping to digitalize the world of medical compliance. And we are building this product using continuous discovery, and what we're hoping to achieve is to create a meaningful experience for our users. A small disclaimer here, also in regards to Dave Snowden's talk, we're not offering a silver bullet here, of course. Product delivery is a nuanced and complex process. But before we can even start taking advantage of the continuous discovery process, we first have to start by liberating our product teams. Rather than tasking them to deliver a fixed roadmap, so let's say, again, deliver this set of features in the next 6 months, we task them with a customer-centric goal. So how does that look like? Well, imagine that we are a car-sharing provider, something like Uber, right? And we've been experiencing that on our platform, the amount of rides that users take constantly declines, and that corresponds with, let's say, the bad reviews that our rides get. So one customer-centric goal that we might task our team with is that we might say, increase the number of 5-star rides, and then give our product teams the individual responsibility and possibility to find solutions. We can now ask, why are we getting bad reviews? It might be that we need a personalized ride system so you can play your custom music, or it might be that we need a reward system for very high-ranked drivers, and those are just examples. But the main idea is that now our product teams can focus about the problem, ironically, rather than already being tasked with a fixed solution. So in that sense, we want to be problem-oriented because it lets us explore the space of possible solutions. So the big question, of course, here now is, so how does this then generate value, both for the customer and then, again, the business? And well, there are many different frameworks which help us translate user-centered goals into business goals. And unfortunately, explaining all of them in detail would kind of go beyond the scope of this talk. But we will give you some metrics that would help you assess whether, or also help us assess whether we are on the right track. Well, what we could do is we could track our retention rate. So let's say we decide to build a certain feature, and then we could see how that influences the retention rate. If the retention rate goes up, that means we might have done something right. And if it goes down, well, then we need to adjust here. We might also track how the net promoter score changes over time, right? We want users to actively promote our product. And there are obviously many, many different other things that you can do to make sure that the decisions that you make as a product team actually have a positive outcome with your users. But the main idea behind all of that is that the more actively users will use and promote your platform, the more likely they are to do so in the future, rather than, I don't know, asking ChatGPT or Google for an alternative competitor. Right, so now that we've set a user-centered goal, it's time that we form our product teams. And our product teams in the most minimal set are the so-called product trio. Well, a product trio consists of a product manager, a representative from the development team, for instance, the lead developer, and a designer. Now, this is only, of course, the most minimal set, like so to speak. And those product teams obviously don't need to consist of only those members. For instance, remember when we said that we work on a medical product? So our product team, in our product team is a person from sales, a representative from the medical, and the compliance domain. But the most important part here is that each individual in the product team brings their unique viewpoint and their unique perspective into when it comes to solving a problem. A software engineer might think completely differently about how to approach a given problem than a designer, and vice versa.
All right, now that we have empowered our product team and also have an outcome that we can work on instead of a fixed feature roadmap, we can start with the actual continuous discovery. And the way we are doing it is by these 3 different steps that we have. So we start off with selecting an opportunity, so the one that we think has the most impact on our outcome. Then we generate the assumptions why we think that this opportunity creates this impact. And then we prove it with an experiment so that we are sure that this really is the case. And then, after we learn, we repeat the cycle. So let's go over one example. We start off with selecting the opportunity. So we have the Uber example again, with the outcome of increasing the number of 5-star rides. And we just assume that in a brainstorming session, our product team, so the product trio, has found these 2 opportunities. And in order to kick this example off quite easy, we just say we decide to go for this personalized rides example, because we anyway validate it. But building is expensive, as we know, so how can we make sure that this really is the opportunity that we want to go for? And the way to go is by generating the assumptions. My favorite method to create those assumptions is to have a look at the 4 different types of risks that there are. So the first one is the value risk, meaning that there is a risk that what we build is actually something that users want and buy and choose over the competitor. So our assumption is that this is the case. The next risk is the usability risk, meaning that we assume that what we build is understandable for the user without standing us beside of him. The next risk is the feasibility risk. So the assumption that what we plan here is actually buildable by the engineers. And the fourth risk is the business risk, meaning like all the various business aspects. So the assumption that we are doing is legal and, for example, profitable. So to come back to our example, we don't have to dive like that deep into the assumptions because we just selected the first opportunity. And our main assumption is we think that personalized rides are the feature that has the most impact on our desired outcome right now. So how can we test this? How can we make sure this is the case before we start building? And the answer here is experimentation. So experimentation in product management is basically just a tool for proving or disproving our assumptions. And there are like hundreds of different experiments that you can use, so far more that you can see here. And it's super important that you distinguish that every experiment has like a different advantage or disadvantage. So I really recommend that at the beginning you focus on experiments that not just validate a single assumption, but also generate more opportunities and help you understand the customer and the problem even more. And the more you come to the end, like to the building the real product, you want to build prototypes that come really close to the actual product so that you can really validate, okay, this is so close, if this works, also the product will work in the end. So to come back to our personalized rides example, where we had the assumption that this is the feature with the most impact on our outcome, how can we validate this? What is the right experiment to use for? And one of my favorite experiments are user interviews. So basically what we do is we design two different types of interviews. One of them is with people who just recently rated 5 stars. And one of them is with people who just recently rated less than 5 stars. And we just ask them, okay, how does that come? Why did you rate it like this? And we already prepared this. So we start with the people who rated 5 stars. And their main reason was a friendly driver, of course, but also that the driver was on time. And also all 5 of the people that we asked mentioned that this was the first ride that they took and they immediately rated it. And it was quite similar for the 2-star rides. So most of them reported that the driver was not on time and some of them were even rude. And also we got some bad feedback for the UI of the application. And interestingly, in all of these cases, it was also the first time they had a ride and probably also the last time. Yeah, so what do we do with this now? Of course, we learned a ton, but also we start now with the next iteration. So the first thing that we did is we learned that personalized rides are probably not the right solution to go for, because nobody mentioned them. Neither the ones who rated 5 stars said, yeah, nice, but it would be even nicer with personalized rides, nor the ones who rated less than 5 stars mentioned that this was the reason. And we found another opportunity instead. So we found out that if we provide a perfect first ride to a new user, he is very likely to book another ride. And we also have evidence now from 10 people that we asked. So to sum up what we did with this small experiment, we just saved a ton of time and resources. Because if we built this personalized ride feature, it would have taken us weeks, if not months, to build. And like this, we didn't code a single line of code, and we found out that this is the wrong way to go. So we validated before we built it. And another thing that we saw is that low fidelity means fast iteration. You can directly adjust those interviews after each other because changing an interview is like no amount of time, whereas changing code takes quite some time. So basically, what we did is we reduced the risk up front. Because for the opportunity that we selected at the beginning, we had no evidence except for us thinking that this is the right solution. Whereas for this opportunity that we have right now, we know that at least 10 people gave us evidence that this is a good opportunity to go for. Which pretty good highlights the core concept between continuous discovery. So don't build the whole thing. Just build like the smallest unit possible to get evidence that you are going into the right direction. And instead of going with like minimal viable products, like it's very popular, go with minimal viable prototypes. And how these minimal viable prototypes can look like and how we are using them in our product development, I will show you in the next few slides. So what you can see here is a short video about a feature that we just recently validated. As you can see, it's just a very simple feature where you can create a component for our application and fill it with some information. And after you have created it, we are also going to delete it. And the interesting thing here is not the feature itself, but that this feature was not coded at that moment. These are just Figma designs that we took and made them clickable. And this is the 5th iteration of this feature. So we did 5 iterations with users that we gave this design and let them do certain tasks just to find out that some things that were inside just didn't bring any value or were not understood. And also, at the end, when we had this prototype, we could just give it to development and they pretty much know exactly what to do. And it was like very easy to ship it. And the next one that I want to show you is the so-called Wizard of Oz MVP. So you might know this shoe company called Zappos. And what this guy did is he went to shoe stores, took photos of the shoes and put it on the website and then sold them online. And as soon as people saw this, they ordered it. And as soon as he got the order, he went back to the shoe store and sent it to them after he bought it. This allowed him to iterate very fast, because at the time where there was no Shopify and so on, it was quite a lot of work to code something like this. So he found out, okay, who are my customers, what do they want, what option do I need to offer? And at the point where he couldn't manage to do all of those logistics anymore, he coded also the backend part and automated everything. Today this is a $1 billion company. Yep. So what can you take with you out of this talk? If you are part of a product team, we really, really recommend to do like we do, weekly interviews, meaning that you just talk to your customers, you have a look how they are using the application, and trust me, you will be surprised how they are using the application and what things they use regularly and what things they're not. You will find a ton of opportunities on how to improve the way of working. And if you're part of a management or a strategic team, I really recommend to start measuring the value created over the features delivered, and to pass outcomes instead of outputs, meaning that empowering your teams, giving them, okay, the goal is to increase the retention and not the goal is to ship these 12 features in the next 12 months. Yeah, and if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Thomas or me on LinkedIn or after the talk. And yeah, if you want to have a look at some further resources, we highly recommend these ones. And other than that, we hope that was useful for you, and thank you so much for your attention.